voting for Hezbollah. The result of the general election in Lebanon boosts the power of the party. The Shia Muslim group supported by Iran is already influential in Lebanon. So will more power complicate the complex politics of the Middle East? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohamed Jamjoom. Corruption, power cuts, rubbish piling up on the streets, and looking after huge numbers of refugees from Syria. Just some of the challenges facing politicians in Lebanon's newly elected parliament. Sunday's parliamentary election was the first in 9 years, and Hezbollah was the winner. The Shia Muslim party with a military wing, which is backed by Iran, won a small majority in parliament and dealt a blow to Prime Minister Saad Hariri, who's supported by predominantly Sunni Saudi Arabia. Hariri is expected to form the next government despite his movement losing a third of its seats. It remains the largest Sunni bloc in parliament. We'll hear from our guests in a moment, but first, Zaina Khudr reports from Beirut.
There was a clear winner in Lebanon's election. Hezbollah and its political allies won the majority of seats in parliament. It's being seen by some as a victory for Iran. The Shia group is backed by Tehran. It's the only Lebanese party that has an armed wing, and its electoral gains further empowers it politically. Hezbollah's leader called for cooperation.
Before the poll, I stressed that there is a reality in Lebanon, and that is that no one can eliminate the other. Even if we have disagreements, we want political stability. We need to cooperate.
The general elections was a loss for Lebanon's Prime Minister. Saad Hariri no longer heads the largest bloc in the legislature, but he still retains the majority of seats allocated to Sunni Muslims. Hariri faced opposition from within his own community. Some accused him of being too lenient with Hezbollah, which is fighting in neighboring Syria. When asked if he plans to change that approach, the Prime Minister said the focus should be on development and improving the Lebanese economy.
I disagree with them on many issues and will continue to disagree with them, but what do I tell the Lebanese people? Will we stop working on services like electricity, water, roads and instead focus on political challenge? Lebanon can't handle political crises.
Hariri clearly indicating his willingness to continue working with his political rivals. He has led a national unity government since late 2016, a cabinet that includes members of Hezbollah.
In the last election in 2009, it was the pro-Western, pro-Saudi alliance headed by Saad Hariri that won the majority of seats in parliament. Since then, Iran's influence has been growing, not just here in Lebanon, but across the region, and it has been at the expense of Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia used to play a major role in Lebanese politics.
Saudi Arabia was busy with other conflicts in the region like Yemen. The war there is a priority for Riyadh. Also, Saudi Arabia was aware that their allies in Lebanon were no longer united and they couldn't be a force to confront Hezbollah. But Riyadh will not leave the ground for Iran.
For now, however, there is little indication that Lebanon is heading towards political instability. Lebanese politicians are talking about putting their differences aside and uniting now that the election is over. Zaina Khudr, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Hezbollah is a Shia Muslim political party in Lebanon with a military wing. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran helped form Hezbollah during Lebanon's civil war in the 1980s. Hezbollah published its political manifesto, or open letter, in 1985, outlining Israel and the U.S. as the enemy. The Taif Accord that ended the Lebanese civil war in 1989 called for the disarmament of militias. Fighters were allowed to keep their weapons when Hezbollah rebranded itself as what it called an Islamic resistance, fighting Israel's occupation. After Israeli forces withdrew from Lebanon 18 years ago, Hezbollah refused to disarm and continued to strengthen its military wing. Hezbollah successfully participated in national elections for the first time in 1992 and started to play an active role in Lebanese politics. When Lebanese government leaders moved to shut down Hezbollah's private telecommunications network in 2008, it responded by fighting Sunni groups and seizing much of the capital, Beirut. Western states, Israel, and many Arab countries designate Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. It sent thousands of fighters to Syria to fight for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Hezbollah's involvement in Syria's civil war has provoked criticism and sharpened sectarian tensions in Lebanon. Let's bring in our guests. Joining us in Beirut, Khaled Hamade, a retired general in the Lebanese army. In Doha, Ibrahim Fraihat, he's an associate professor in international conflict resolution at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. And also in Beirut, Kamal Wazne, founder of the Center of American Strategic Studies. A warm welcome to you all. Now, Kamil, I want to ask you first, how big a loss was this for Saad Hariri and his future bloc? And why was his showing so poor in his stronghold areas?
Of course, he lost 1/3 of his coalition. It's a major loss for his coalition. But in the end, Lebanon is built on consensus. And I'm sure maybe the political process that going forward will find a place for him. And maybe he return as a Prime Minister of Lebanon. With accommodation for certain points that highlight maybe the importance of the resistance again and importance of a real plan for the economic condition in Lebanon in light of the major deficit that we have in Lebanon and the corruption that we have in Lebanon. So in total, yes, he lost some influence, and probably it gives a way for rethinking the whole election law that was enacted very fast and was not actually well liked by the Lebanese people because very low turnout came out for this election.
Khaled, was one of the factors contributing to Mr. Hariri's poor showing this time a sense amongst his Sunni Muslim supporters in Lebanon that he wasn't doing enough to counter Hezbollah?
First of all, I think Mr. Hariri, by maintaining his alliance with the political group of the president, and by his, let's say, the limitation and the limited cooperation with his former ally in the 14th of March, I think the people, the Sunni people, they have no longer confidence in Hariri choices. So for that, they were not very motivated to go and to the elections and to elect Mr. Hariri. And meanwhile, they don't have other choices. For that, we see this low voter turnout. And I think also there is a misconfidence between and misunderstanding also between, for example, Mr. Hariri and Mr. Jumblat and Mr. Ja'ja, where we see in the elections that there was no cooperation between them. And I think the alliance between Mr. Hariri and Mr. Jubran Basir, that decline, you know, all the others political groups let Mr. Hariri paid a lot, and that's what Mr. Jumblat told him yesterday during a short speech. He said that the Ta'if is based on the sacrifices of many Lebanese people, and it's not up to Hariri to decline this agreement and to decline the authorities of the position of the Prime Minister.
Okay, Ibrahim, you heard Khaled there talking a lot about the political forces in Lebanon, about alliances that have to be made. Based on what you're seeing now, do you believe that Saad Hariri's prime ministership is under threat, or do you think that he will continue in that role?
Well, thank you. I think what my colleagues in Beirut mentioned are important factors that could explain his loss in these elections. But it's not only about the domestic factors. Actually, there is an important regional factor here that happened or affected these elections, which is actually that Hariri was significantly undermined in his latest crisis with Saudi Arabia. I mean, Hariri, he delivered his resignation from Riyadh, and then he withdrew his resignation, and then we don't know what happened, and then the French president had to mediate or intervene to have him leave Riyadh. So this all actually as a leader, this all significantly undermined Hariri and questioned his leadership as a Sunni leader in Lebanon. What explains this actually is that Hariri lost 5 seats in Tripoli in the north in his Sunni place for his Sunni rivals. Mikati, former ex-prime minister, won a Sunni leader in the north, actually won 4 seats. So this is undermining his political leadership. Was a major factor, I think, that explains what happened to him. Now, whether he's going to secure his or keep his job, his political future now in Lebanon, or this is going to end there, I think for the time being we're going to see him continuing, but again with much less power than used to be in the past. For a simple reason. One is that he still has about 21 seats in the parliament, so he's still considered the second party there. And you know, because of also the Lebanese election law, that a Sunni prime minister will have to be in this position. So I think for the time being, it's possible that we see him continuing, but unfortunately with more of a compromised position, undermined position compared to what he had in the past.
Okay, Khaled, Ibrahim there was just really highlighting how delicate, how fragile the political balance is and really has been for such a long time in Lebanon. So what is the immediate result of these elections? What does it do to that fragile balance?
Well, actually, this is Lebanon is built on consensus, no matter what the result will be. In the end, the Lebanese has to come and have to sit on a table, and that's probably what we heard from everybody, whether from the Prime Minister or the Speaker of the Parliament, or from the leader of Hezbollah, or from Ibrahim Basil. Everybody has to come to the table, and they have to look forward, because we have a lot of issues that has to be addressed and has to be addressed immediately. We don't have a lot of time, because the economy and the debt clock is ticking on Lebanon. So any delay in forming a government or playing politics at this time, it will not really set very well with the Lebanese economy, because the issue really at this time, when you have a debt close to $81 billion and you have interest on the debt and you have a huge deficit and you have a very weak economy, and you want to give a good picture to the international community in light of that commitment to help Lebanon economically. So any delay in forming a government, it would not set very well with the Lebanese and would not set very well for the future of Lebanon. Said that, I think there's certain issues that has to be dealt with, and I think probably the formation of the government probably will hang on couple issue, who's going to hold certain position within the government, especially the finance ministry. I think it's going to be a hot issue. Probably if it doesn't resolve quickly, it probably will delay the formation of the government.
Okay, Khaled, when you're talking about the economy in Lebanon has been in a dire condition for a while now. And one of the things that was really campaigned upon, one of the issues in the run-up to this election was trying to get the economy into a better place. Now, clearly government officials there wanted to encourage much more people to come out and cast a vote. But at the end of the day, it was less than 50%. Why is that? Is it a lack of faith in the politicians? Is it the new electoral law that people found very confusing? Or is it a lot more than that as well?
No, first of all, I think there is a mistrust between the Lebanese people, the Lebanese citizens, and the politicians. This is first. Second, the Lebanese people, they tried this political class, and they believe that nothing will be changing, even if they will have a new parliament. Everybody knows that even this new military member of parliament, they are coming from the same political parties, the same political groups. So they don't believe that something interesting will be changing. Second, I think the issue of Hezbollah, nobody believed that President Hariri will be ready with his ally, I mean the President of the Republic, they will be able to meet the challenges and the programs that Mr. Hariri and the President posed before. For example, with this political loss of President of Prime Minister, how, for example, he will be able to discuss, for example, the strategy of defense in Lebanon. I mean here how what is the plan to be discussed, which can contain really the weapons of Hezbollah. And even Mr. Hariri will be able to deploy the Lebanese armed forces on the eastern borders and stop the smuggling of arms and people and weapons. All these big questions, the Lebanese people, they don't believe that the new government will be able to solve it or to face it.
Khaled,
second, I think
Khaled,
now that...
sorry,
yes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to pick out something you were saying and also ask Ibrahim about it. He's talking about Hezbollah and security of Lebanon, and I want to ask you, Ibrahim, what does this victory by Hezbollah mean when it comes to Iran's role in Lebanon, and if it has really consolidated power there?
Well, definitely. Actually, this is a major victory for Hezbollah and his allies. And this is another place that where Iran is consolidating its influence in the region. And let's keep in mind that we are now seeing this what's called the ultimate deal, the Trump, Saudi, Israel alliance that's being formed. Which the core reason of this alliance is confronting Iran in the region and in places like Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and in other places. So for what we're seeing now, actually, and this is probably one reason that played really against Hariri, is that with allies like Donald Trump, you don't need enemies because that could explain why there is poor doing of his elections. So I think now we are seeing this whole deal about confronting Iran is not making progress in Lebanon in one place. But also at the same time, let's not overestimate the readings of this victory or of this gaining of influence, additional gain of influence for Iran, because at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to affect the regional alliance and the ultimate deal and the way that the United States and Saudi Arabia is proceeding on that level. But it's a strong sign to show that this is not the goal, the whole objective about this Saudi, American, Israel alliance is not making progress, and it's giving additional support and an additional influence for Iran in Lebanon in a popular voting that's making all this progress at a time when we're seeing additional or escalation of the threats between Lebanon and between Hezbollah and Israel, Iran and Israel in Syria or in other places. So I think this has to be taken into consideration, but to a certain level within what's going on now.
Okay, Khaled, let me go back to you and pick up on what Ibrahim was saying, because Israeli officials have been quoted in the past few days saying that the results of these elections essentially prove that there's no distinction between Lebanon and Hezbollah. So what do you think Israel might do now?
I think Lebanon as a battlefield is not the appropriate one for a future confrontation between Lebanon and Israel. I think Iran and Israel, both of them, they are satisfied about the resolution 1701. And I think Israel now has no threats from the Lebanese, from South Lebanon, and Hezbollah is satisfied, and his pushing forward and to enlarge his impact and his efficiency inside the political life in Lebanon. So I think there will be no confrontation between Lebanon and Israel through our thousand borders. I think Syria now is the appropriate place for a confrontation, a very wide confrontation between Iran and Israel, and between the United States and Iran. And I think that this Israeli declaration means nothing for us. We heard it since years, And we are sure that 1701 is very, very appropriate for the peace of the northern regions in Israel.
Kamel, let me ask you to pick up on that. I want to ask you first, Hezbollah's showing comes at a time of really heightened tension between Iran and Israel. So I want to ask you what you think comes next on that front. But also, I want to ask you what you think is going to happen with regard to Syria and Lebanon in light of Hezbollah's victory.
I think the major issue that probably part of the agenda for to bring back the refugee that they are in Lebanon, the Syrian refugee, back to Syria. I think this is going to be a major issue in the coming days and in the coming months, especially when we form a government, because there is a division among this issue, how we deal with the refugees. As far as Hezbollah and the security of Lebanon, I think nothing will change. I think the election probably reinforced the position of Hezbollah that his weapon is a deterrent, and it can be used only for deterrence against any Israeli aggression. I think the situation today probably will hear some major announcement from the Trump administration. We don't know where this will take us, but my understanding, the way I look at it, if there is going to be a confrontation between the Iranian and the Israeli in Syria, it will not stop in Syria. It will be a regional war, and Lebanon will not be out of this confrontation.
Khaled, let me ask you, how problematic are the results of this election, especially for the U.S., which considers Hezbollah to be a terrorist group, and also for Europe in their dealings with Lebanon?
I think the American administration will be waiting until the formation of the new government, and we'll see if Saad Hariri will be able really to meet all the promises that he made before to the President Macron and to the President Trump. And from my point of view, I think Mr. Hariri, if he will be called, and I think he will be called to form the new government, I think he will face many problems, starting from what said Hassan Nasrallah yesterday about how the new parliament has to protect the resistance and Hezbollah militia, and about the issue of Mr. Nabih Berri about the Ministry of Finance, that it's one of the acquired rights of the Shia community. And also I think another issue will raise up also is about the relations between Lebanon and Syria, and this point will be will form a big conflict between Mr. Hariri and the President Aoun.
Khaled,
everybody knows
Khaled,
that,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just that we're
yes.
just almost out of time. I only have time for one more question, and I want to give the last word here to Ibrahim. Ibrahim, of course, these elections, there was a huge drive to try to get the youth in Lebanon to come out and vote, to vote for independent lists, to vote for independent candidates. At the end of the day, that didn't happen. Why do you think that is?
Well, that is a very important question, and I think there is a huge issue. I call this election an issue of accountability. The people holding their governments accountable for a widespread corruption that's everywhere in the Lebanese government. And we heard about, of course, the notorious waste management issue that Lebanon experienced under this government and under this political system. We have to keep in mind that the elections percentage dropped from 54% in 2009, the last one, to now 49%, actually, which means about 5% did not go to vote because of this disbelief in the political establishment. And as a result, also, we're seeing that an independent journalist from the NGOs, Paula Yacobian, also making it as an independent outside this political system. So I think that was a word said to the government, that there is a mistrust issue, holding the government accountable and holding Hariri accountable, because he's, at the end of the day, he is the prime minister. And this crisis also, he takes part of the blame for whether it's the corruption or
Ibrahim,
waste management and all of that.
I'm going to have to stop you there. We've run out of time. Gentlemen, we thank you very much. Thanks to all our guests, Ibrahim Fraihat, Kamel Wazne, and Khaled Hamade. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohamed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.